All right, so this is Move to Improve. I'm your host, Dr. Matthew Jurgis. We have Dr. Greg Uchaz here today, and our special guest, which is Julia Shelley. Julia is a WBFF fitness champion, but she came to that position in a very interesting kind of way because she was a flight attendant for the United Nations. And she was sent out to war-torn countries. Now, anyways, I'll let her kind of get into that. She also is a women's fitness coach for a brand named Army of Angels. Maybe she wants to touch on that in a little bit. But Julia, how you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Excellent.
Good. Thanks for having me.
Greg?
Good, man. I'm good. I'm interested to hear some stories.
Yeah.
I saw some pictures here before the podcast, and it's pretty interesting.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so maybe you can kind of introduce things a little more accurately than I have. So where did your kind of work with the UN take you?
So I started with an airline that contracts to the UN, and I started with Afghanistan in 2012. Did a couple years, 2 years in Afghanistan, and then when they shut that down, I moved straight to Mali. So I went right into Bamako, Mali in a UN mission, and then moved all over from Mali to Sudan, South Sudan, Niger, Congo, Yemen, Uganda.
Crazy.
So a lot of resort countries. That's
Yeah,
nice.
beautiful. Beautiful city resorts.
Wow.
Yeah, pina coladas on the beach, right?
Yeah.
And during this time, you were competing, either like in fitness competitions.
Yeah, so
and became a pro.
I did my very first competition right before I got the job. And it was supposed to just be a bucket list, like a one and done. I just wanted to try it out. I was a personal trainer at the time at a gym in my hometown. And it just seemed like a fun thing to do. So in good promotion as a trainer, so I tried it.
And they're not easy.
No, exactly.
Right.
And I wanted to test myself, you know, to be able to do that. So I prepped for my first show. I won my first show. And so I went on the following weekend, did another one, won that, and was like, all right, I'm going to keep doing this. But then about a month later, I got the call that I got the job. So that put a kind of a wrench in everything, but in a good way. So I was very excited about the job, but I assumed I wouldn't be able to compete anymore from these kind of locations. And then I went to Afghanistan, and it turned out it was an amazing place to compete from. It was, the food wasn't the greatest options, you know, military defects, but the training was, I mean, we had nothing else to do. You didn't really have a social life in war zones, you just worked out. And it's all military there, right? So special forces.
But what resources do you have to work out, right? Like so you're lifting stones, are you not?
In Africa, absolutely. In Afghanistan, no. In Afghanistan, it was like a set up NATO base, so we had a decent gym. Especially it was like 13 years by then, you know, the war had been going on for. So yeah, it was well set up at that point. But I only did one show from Afghanistan, and then got moved to Africa after that. And so when I moved to Africa, I put competing on hold for a couple of years, thinking it was impossible. And then I was deployed in this UN camp in South Sudan once, and we had an okay gym. Was, you know, nothing so great. We were, you know, kind of used to more at home, so complaining about, like, you know, thinking we had nothing, until I looked outside and I realized that the Ghanaian soldiers really had nothing, and they made the best of it. They were training with cement weights. They couldn't afford to go to the UN gym that we complained about, that we thought we had nothing at, and so I ended up going to train with them and lifting cement weights.
So those are the pictures I saw.
Those are the pictures, yeah.
Yeah, so for listeners, it kind of looks like a guillotine that you can kind of put weights on. It was unreal, right?
Yeah.
Lots of cable work, right?
So a lot of it is, and so we were an aircraft crew, or an airline crew as well, so we had like old aircraft brakes and things like that. So anytime there was things that we could lend them or, you know, donate, we would do that. So the Ghanaian soldiers ended up building up this amazing gym with aircraft brakes as like the plates.
Oh my
And,
God.
they made the dumbbells and the barbells with cement. We just did pull-ups on a tree. It was amazing. So that was the year I decided to compete again. So I got there, I was based there beginning of 2017, and was definitely, all poor me. I don't have anything to, I can't compete anymore, until I saw these soldiers training like every single day, so intense, with cement. And I was immediately inspired and was like, that's it.
It's got to be a really cool mindset then, right?
Yeah,
to be in that.
absolutely. And that's all it is. So in competing, it really ends up being all about mindset. So they inspired me. I started training with cement in that outdoor gym in 40 degrees Celsius, and was like more inspired because of that.
Yeah.
So I just kept going. Moved around a few other bases, but that I ended up doing a 9-month tour that year. And so I just coached myself, prepped myself in Africa, and then 9 months later flew to LA, competed in Beverly Hills, and won my pro status.
So I have a whole bunch of questions, but the first thing that comes to mind, do you remember that movie Rocky where he's fighting Dolph Lundgren? The Russian?
The reach bar bag.
And yeah, you guys might be a little young for that. But
I remember.
yeah, right, so Rocky has to climb mountains and lift, trees and whatever, right? And nets full of rocks and stuff. So I totally knew he was going to win, right? Because Dolph was, stun machines and whatnot. And,
Yeah.
so big, different mindset, more natural training. And
That's
just
funny.
Yeah.
building up the body there. That's
Well,
awesome.
Makes you think how much mindset trumps everything else, like your your resources, your access to having the diet you would want, or that maybe the gym equipment you would
entrenched
want.
in it. It's cool. But here's my big question: is that I know how hard it is to train for these things. I know how grueling it is, and I know what the mindset takes. I've treated all the way from the past of aerobics competitions to figure competitions, bikini competitions, fitness competitions, natural bodybuilding competitions, and how much dedication it takes, not only to training, but to lifestyle. And with lifestyle comes diet. How hard was it to find proper nutrition and to intake what you need to intake and avoid what you need to avoid? There's not a lot of choice, is there? When you're in Ghana?
There's not a lot of choice, but I kind of switched my mindset, and I realized that there's not a lot of choice, but I also don't have the temptation that people at home have.
Yeah, fair
So
enough.
everyone's got a different challenge, right? So,
Yeah.
there's, when I reach stage, there's everyone's got a different journey to stage, and everyone's been faced with something they had to overcome along the way. It's usually about anywhere between 4 and 6 months to prep for stage, usually. So in that time, you're bound to face certain adversities, whether it's just with your family or injuries or anything that could come up. Or there's a lot of moms that compete that would be taking care of kids and trying to prepare all the sorts of different meals and have one that's hard to organize their time, but then two, there's more temptation, and what if they're snacking on little things here or there? I'm just by myself in a war zone. Yeah, that's tough. That's what I have going against me, but I don't have the temptation that people have at home. So I had a different mindset around it. I actually kind of realized that I was lucky in a way that I didn't have those things, and that I was actually constantly inspired by my environment and my surroundings, because I didn't feel like I had the right to complain about food when people outside couldn't afford food, right?
Dr.
That
George,
goes a
I
long way.
have more questions, sorry.
Yeah, well, I'll jump in, I suppose.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you mentioned injuries. How you can't be having great healthcare. I know you're now getting amazing healthcare coverage here, but when you're on tour, there can't be great healthcare coverage, I wouldn't think.
It depends. If we are on a military base, and if we're covered with the military, then it would be good. But if we were, and most of the time we weren't. If we were on a UN base or we were living in the city, so in Sudan, I lived in just an apartment building right downtown Khartoum kind of thing. So same with Congo. So no, we would just go to the regular doctors, hospitals, and we didn't have a lot of options. Some healthcare is okay, but when it comes to sports, that's where it's lacking. So
did you get really good at like self-therapy?
a little bit. And I was really injured. My worst year was 2018. I was just like, I had countless injuries that year. And so I took that year off competing. Well, I competed in April. I took the end of the year off. And I did come back the next year, but in the meantime, I went to India, got my yoga teacher training. I literally did the like eat, pray, love trip. I was just super zen living in India. And I got my yoga certification and I started really getting into that. And I found that helped. So yes, a lot of self-care.
Yeah, restoring proper movement to the body and getting some balance according.
And I'd foam roll and I'd bring that kind of stuff on tour as well. I brought a lot with me on tour because I knew we had next to nothing. So I would pack for my tours with I always had a weighted vest. I brought dumbbells, kettlebells, ruined my luggage, but I stocked our bases in Africa really well.
So what did yoga kind of serve for you? Did you feel like you had to do something else to kind of experience something different, train your body in a different dimension? Because a topic that comes up a lot in our realm or in the past podcasts is kind of over specialization, or too much of one sport can almost be detrimental sometimes. And I don't think bodybuilding is any different. Like totally huge benefits to weightlifting, obviously, right? But what did yoga serve for you?
Yoga has helped me in so many ways, whether it's, definitely with just stretching, mobility, all of that kind of stuff. But mindset and awareness, that sort of thing, breath work. So there's so many benefits to it. I kind of got into it originally for the mobility, the flexibility, that sort of thing. I didn't really go for the woohoo. That's what I thought at first. I was not about the meditation initially and the spiritual side of it until I really got into it, until I got hooked, and then I realized the benefits of the breath work and the meditation, and now I'm super into all of that. Hypnotherapy, I do that. I do everything now. So it took a while to get to that point. Yeah.
The meditative side.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, Greg, sorry, go ahead.
No, so you showed me some pictures before the podcast today, which are pretty cool, right? It was where you were training in Ghana. So this is a super cool story of somebody who became a professional athlete while they were on tour, in war zones, working at military facilities that didn't have the resources, and you were able to compete and become a champion at a world level, international level. People, that's in and of itself a super cool story. But until you see the pictures, you don't fully grasp that. Do you have like an Instagram that people can go to and look at?
I do. I do post those sometimes. I will go back and I'll post things from tour. And so anyone that's been following me for a while has seen all of that. I should probably bring it back more because it is unique, of course.
It is. It's such a cool story, right?
But yeah, it's, I don't know. I don't know why I don't bring it up as much. I guess I only have so much content when it comes to what I took, like of the cement weights and that sort of thing. To be honest, I took pictures when I was overseas, of course, but I wasn't around. I wasn't in a community of people, of other athletes, competitors or anything like that, where people were doing this or people were taking selfies or videotaping themselves in the gym. And most of the time I was in Muslim countries too. So I was respectfully not doing these things and not wanting to draw too much attention to myself either. So I didn't document as much as I would like to.
Yeah, no,
but
that's fair.
my surrounding wasn't like that, and my friends weren't like that. It felt strange because most of my friends and family barely even use social media.
Yeah.
So it's and once you get sponsored and all of those things happen, you've got that community of other athletes that you're with, that you're doing these things with. But it is in your regular environment. It does feel weird sometimes.
So that kind of begs another question, because when you look at people that compete in your, field or pursue those dreams, it almost seems like nowadays social media is an inherent part of kind of, pushing. It's, not only does a sport like bodybuilding take an incredible amount of kind of daily discipline, and almost, compulsive amount, and then you have to show up and be perfect and kind of, hold that abdominal pressure while you're posing, and which I'm sure is exhausting. You probably tell us about that. But then there also is like an element of you're an influencer. And so is that a role that you just kind of, you just took on, you just accepted as part of it, or was that difficult?
I think that I still don't see myself that way. I know my social media definitely has grown since I started fitness modeling. I think when I first started competing, I think I remember having maybe like 500-600 followers or so. So there's fitness modeling and competing has completely changed that. And then getting sponsored, of course, will change that too. But it does come, it does. Many of us feel as though it does play a part when we're getting ready for stage. And I think some people worry about that, if we're getting judged on that, about what the kind of politics are behind it, who's got more, followers, or who's more famous when it comes to the show. I don't think that that's really what it comes down to be totally honest. But it does help with your career, of course. So most of us that are competing are working in the fitness industry as well. Many of us are. I wasn't for the past decade, and then so I've been competing for a decade, and then I only just started working in the fitness industry 5-6 months ago.
So I would argue that you became a champion because you were engrossed in that industry. Like I going to the Olympics, I've had the honor of going to a number of Olympics and games like Commonwealth, Pan Am, Francophone, and I look back now and I go, oh my God, I have like virtually no pictures of any of these, of me being at these events, but you're engrossed and you're living in the moment and you're there and you're doing what you do, right? And you're so focused that and your attention is on what it needs to be on, that you just kind of forget that side of it a little bit, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And you're respectful. I'm not going to take pictures of athletes. It's, hey, can I take your picture?
Right,
with me?
yeah.
You're just doing your thing. And so that's part of you becoming a champion, right?
Yeah. And then you're just more focused that way.
Yeah.
Like you're just putting in the work, and that's really what matters in the end. So yeah, I mean, looking back, I kind of wish I had documented more of when I won my pro status, because that was, I did a 9-month straight tour in Africa, and it started with cement weights and ended in Beverly Hills. Like, that is
crazy. Yeah.
That doesn't make sense, right?
It's a great story.
So I kind of wish I had something to show for that, but
it's a good point that, the fact that wasn't even a priority for you, kind of, maybe that's part of the reason your priorities were obviously elsewhere at the time, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't compete for only that reason. I mean, I compete for many other reasons, and I think what's kept me in it for so long, one, I just am very competitive with myself. I'm not competitive with others, but I'm competitive with myself, always wanting to be my best. So that hooked me. But then also because I started it right before going on deployments, the mental health side of it, having that as an outlet for the environment we were in, I don't know what I would have done, because I saw a lot of people have much worse outlets, let's say, and I didn't want to go down that path. So
for those of you that don't follow you, what's your Instagram?
Julia Shelley.
It is Julia Shelley.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So with the EY, SHLLEY, and then Army of Angels is my business Instagram as well, my team.
Cool.
So what's next?
What's next? Well, usually I compete at the World Championship every August, so that will be in Vegas this year.
That'll be fun.
So most likely, start prep in a couple of months, maybe. Semi-start it now, we'll see. And have a little bit of a, I didn't do much of a build this year, but maybe a kind of a little bit of extra time in build and maintenance phase, and then move into a cut around April and get ready for stage. So that's that's the plan competition wise. I don't know. Everything else is so new to me. I've been overseas for so long, so I just moved back to Canada. I've only been here 5 months and just getting used to it. Like I love it. I absolutely love being in Calgary all the time now. Yeah, just settling in, building a business.
Yeah.
I don't know what else is next.
Well, it's probably time, hey, after all the crazy life travel that you've kind of been through, to be able to kind of sink your roots in a little more.
Yeah, it feels good. Definitely been on the go for a long time, so it's a lot to get used to.
Yeah, totally. Well, thank you so much, Julia. Appreciate it. And that's, a very inspiring story to think, there's so many people you talk to that even myself, right? It's very easy to come up with excuses that, I didn't really get a good sleep or a good meal in or whatever. And lots of things can get in the way of your fitness goals. But to think that you were able to obviously make that happen working with what you did is, it's inspiring.
Thank you.
It's a great story. Thank you. That was awesome.
Thanks for meeting with me.
All right. And thanks to all our listeners. Appreciate the support. And go ahead and follow Julia Shelley at Julia Shelley Fit on Instagram there. All right. Take care.